Hi everyone! So this video was inspired by another coloring channel, an art channel, where they mentioned that people are saying that the Cezanne color pencils and the Sargent art color pencils were the same. But this person said, well, I don't know if this is the case because I only have one set, so I can't compare. So, I mean, someone else may have already done this, but I'm just going to do it anyways. I thought, why not? Let's see. I happen to have both sets. And there's nothing worse than realizing, right, that you bought the same set twice. You just want to you know. You find this stuff out later because when you first start getting color pencils, you know, you don't realize about white labeling and how the same factory is making different pencils. But let's see. Maybe they are different. I did not think that they were the same pencils. But then again, I didn't realize at first that, you know, to look for. So I'm going to give you my opinion here, just looking at both canisters, both containers here. I've got the Cezanne. I do enjoy using both of these pencils. The Cezanne, in general, I think is a harder pencil than the Sargent Arts, but I love them both, you know, love all my pencils. So first things first, they do look very similar, right? They have the same setup here, the same, which is always a red flag, right? It's like, oh, they look the same, they're probably the same. So this is the Sargent Art, and this is the Cezanne. Now the Sargent, you know, it's slightly different. The color goes up lower on the Sargent Art pencils, but they both have a silver band in the center. The Sargent Art is gold. The Cezanne is silver on top. They're both closed in the back, so you can't look at the lead from the back. I like looking at the backs to see how thick the lead is. But eyeballing it, I would say they look very close. The Cezanne might be a little narrower, but only slightly. It's either identical size lead or Cezanne slightly narrower. But the proof is in the pudding. They look alike, which is, you know, probably proof in and of itself, but as they always say, proof is in the pudding. So I'm going to do some drawing and see. I'll use the same colors or as close as possible and see how it turns out. Let me hold the leads up to the camera here. Maybe you can see a little better. But this is the Cezanne, and this one over here is the Sargent Art. So I think the Cezanne pencils are slightly larger, but the leads look about the same size. Now, the Cezanne pencils have numbers instead of names, so you have to really search to try to find the same color, and you can't always go by the barrel to get the color. So I think it would be, I'm not going to try to find a bunch of pencils the same exact. These look close enough. They're both blues. And I'm going to test them out. Sharpen them both. They both sharpen beautifully. They're both narrower pencils, so they'll fit in any standard pencil sharpener. So the Cezanne is a harder pencil. It's not all creamy like a Prismacolor or a Brutfunner. So it's a layering type of pencil. It does get very vibrant. Here I'm pressing down hard. You can see it does get very deep, vibrant colors. They're very saturated. And now the Sargent Art feels lighter in the hand, so it's probably slightly less lead in this one. It's probably narrow. It does feel lighter for sure. But I must say that it does get just as pigmented, it appears, with this color at least. Yeah, it's a little softer. I think that this lead is softer than the Cezanne. The Cezanne is harder. maybe a little scratch here. So it feels different. So I think the quality of the core there, the Sargent art is definitely softer. And I think I noticed that when I was doing artwork with the two of them, the Sargent art I can smudge and blend better. So I'll do a little bit of that. So I'm going to, okay, back to the Sargent art here. So the Sargent art is on the bottom. The color is a little bit of a lighter blue that I'm using because I can't take too long to try to find the exact same blue, so I just chose the closest one. Yeah, when you're using it, the Cezanne pencil is a little heavier, and the core is harder. So it depends what you like. Do you like a little bit waxier, or do you want more of an harder pencil? So the Cezanne is slightly harder, but they both get very pigmented when you press down hard. So, all right, now I'm going to take a pinkish or mauve type color. So again, the Cezanne, this is number 115, a Cezanne. And I'll take the one named in Sargent art called Dark Rose. So Dark Rose, and okay, so Sargent art here. And then the Cezanne here. Yeah, Cezanne is definitely harder and goes on a little less pigmented initially. I'm going to layer up a little more, maybe. I should probably count the layers. Okay, so I'm new at this. Bear with me. I'll get better at it with time. So Cezanne and Sargent art. I'm spelling that right. Yeah, Sargent, yeah. All right, so I'll do this officially. Here we go. I've watched enough videos with people doing testing. I should know right by now, right? So Cezanne, we'll go 1, 2, 3, 6. Okay, there's 6 there. We'll do the same thing with Sargent art. Try to do exactly the same. 1. Oops, that's not so good. 2. Yeah, so Sargent art is creamier, goes on darker, more saturated. It's a different core. I'm convinced it's a different core, just from feeling it, from using it. So Cezanne 53 and Sargent art marine blue. So Cezanne, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we'll go Sargent art. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm using the same pressure. I'm being as close as I can. 5. Sargent art is definitely coming out more saturated with both colors, the reddish and the bluish, for sure. They're different pencils. They look very similar, but the cores are they're definitely different. They feel different. You can feel it. The Cezanne pencils are heavier, but the Sargent art's coming out more saturated and creamier. And one last thing I'll do is I'll use my blender, my Prismacolor blender here, and I will smudge it up a bit. So Cezanne, I'm going to try to use the same pressure with both. Cezanne again. Go the opposite direction here. And then the Sargent art. I'm trying to use the same pressure here. And I don't know if you can see it on the camera are not, but the Sargent Art is definitely darker, more pigmented, more saturated, however you want to look at it. But again, they're both beautiful pencils. They both work very well. I think it's just that the Cezanne core is harder. They both get very saturated, though. When you press down really hard, again, here's the Cezanne. When I press down really hard, a nice, deep, vibrant color. It feels really good in the hand. I mean, it's a very nice, smooth, hard pencil. And again, if I use the Sargent Art pencil and press down really hard, same thing. I think that it's easier and to get more. It's easier to get that dark to press down and get that harder color. To press a little harder with the Cezanne. It's a harder core, like I said. And the Sargent Art also, because the Sargent Art is a bit waxier, I find it blends better when you want to smooth colors together. So I'm going to use that. Grab another pencil. So the Sargent Art and the Sargent Art here, putting these two, just doing a quick squiggle there, and then I'll do the same with Cezanne. So here's Cezanne, do a quick squiggle here. They're both beautiful pencils, and they look very similar, which is why it's easy to assume they're the same cores, but they're not. When you're using them side by side, you can feel the difference and see the difference. So when you smush together, if I smush together the Sargent Art, they blend very well. They're much more like Prismacolor. Sargent Art is more like Prismacolor. Cezanne is more like Polychromos. You have to layer and layer, but you still both are going to give you vibrant colors. They both blend pretty well. But the Sargent Art is much more, again, pigmented, darker, much more like Prismacolor, the Sargent Art. Yeah. That is what I get from my results, my short comparison. Hope it's of some help to someone out there. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.